Hello students, we will now study the poetic devices used in the poem A Lake Isle of Innisfree, which is a lyrical poem. By lyrical poem I mean a musical poem. In poetry, this form is used to express a person's personal feelings and thoughts. We have studied the personal feelings and thoughts of the poet William Butler Yeats. Now it's time to study the poetic devices. Children, do you know why these poetic devices are used in poetry? Poetic devices are form of literary device which are used in a poetry. Now these are used by the poet to create rhythm, intensify a mood or feeling, or enhance a poem's meaning. These are just like spices in writing. Whenever you are eating Maggie, can you imagine the taste of Maggie without spices? But when you add spices to it, it becomes amazing, right? So these poetic devices, these are just like spices in writing. It enhances the meaning of the poem and it also intensifies a mood or feeling. Let's study the poetic devices used in the poem A Lake Isle of Innisfree. Children, in the very first line of the poem, the word go has been repeated. Now it provides a special emphasis on the importance of the action of going to Innisfree. This poetic device is known as repetition. Repetition is a simple repeating of a word in a sentence or a poetical line to add emphasis to certain actions. Similarly, in line number 5 and 6, the poet has repeated the word peace and dropping. Peace emphasizes calmness and dropping stresses the easy pace of things in nature, which is in contrast to the rush of the city life. Also, in line number 10 and 12, the repetition of the phrase I hear brings out the deep yearning in his heart that pulls him to the Lake Isle of Innisfree. Now let's study about the second poetic device used in the poem. There is a line in the poem which is in stanza 1, which reads like this: "And a small cabin built there of clay and wattles made." Children, do you feel this line is written in the correct order? Not really. The correct order of the line should be "and build a small cabin there made of clay and wattles." You just see the change in structure of the sentence. This is the correct form of the sentence, but here that form has been changed. Now why it has been done by the poet? Poet is sensible. That means when he has done something, he might have done it intentionally. Okay. So the poet has changed the prose order of this line, or he has changed the structure of this line to maintain the rhyme and also to give a poetic effect. And this poetic device is known as inversion. The third poetic device used by the poet is alliteration. Now what is an alliteration? This is the repetition of a consonant sound in two or more closely placed words. And in the poem, you will find the use of alliteration in line number 3, where the H sound is repeated. Also in line number 10, the L sound is repeated. Metaphor. This is a figure of speech that describes an object or action in a way that isn't literally true, but helps to explain an idea or to make a comparison. So here children, you are already aware of the use of metaphor in poetry. What exactly is metaphor? When you make a comparison between two unlike objects. Okay, this is a figure of speech in which two unlike objects are compared by identification or by substitution of one another. There is also one figure of speech which you are already aware of, that is simile. Now how metaphor differs from simile? A metaphor differs from a simile in the use of words like as and like. In metaphor, we are not using the word as or like, but in simile it is used. Now let's read the use of metaphor in the poem. Metaphor has been used in the phrase veils in the morning. It is a metaphor for the clouds in the morning sky, or maybe the fog of the early morning. This could all appear like veils that are lifted once the sun rises. The next poetic device used in the poem is personification. Now, what is personification? Personification is a poetic device in which human traits or human qualities are attributed to something abstract or non-living. So when lifeless objects are given human qualities, it is known as personification. In the same phrase, veils of the morning, morning is personified as a woman whose face has been covered by a veil. The next poetic device used is imagery. Now, what is imagery? It is a figure of speech that uses figurative language to represent objects, actions, and ideas in such a way that it appeals to our physical senses. Throughout the poem, the poet has made abundant use of imagery to paint a picture of the place he desires to go. As for example, when we read the phrase veils of the morning, it refers to the sky which is covered with clouds and which clears as the sun rises. This picture we can frame in our mind while we read this phrase. We can paint a picture of the place or the thing he has tried to explain. Also, when we hear the phrase midnight's all a glimmer, noon a purple glow, lake water lapping on the shore, it creates the image of a dreamland in our mind. We can imagine things right there. We can imagine a dreamland or a place where sky is lit with stars at night and purple blossoms spreads eternal beauty throughout the day. Now we will study the rhyming scheme of the poem, which is very important. In a poetry, we should focus if there is any rhyme scheme or not. And in the beginning itself, I have told you about this. This poem consists of 12 lines divided into 3 stanzas, and let's find out what is the rhyme scheme of this poem. I will arise and go now and go to Innisfree. Just notice this word here, Innisfree. In every line we will focus on the last word. So we mark it as A. And a small cabin built there of clay and wattles made. Now children, do you think Innisfree and made are rhyming with each other? No, it is not rhyming. So we mark it as B. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honeybee. Now you see, Innisfree and honeybee, it is rhyming with each other. So we mark it as A. And live alone in the bee loud glade. Maid and glade, it is rhyming with each other. So the rhyming scheme of this poem is A, B, A, B. These are some of the famous quotes written by the poet. But I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams. Think where man's glory most begins and ends, and say my glory was I had such friends. All empty souls tend toward extreme opinions. Thank you children. Happy learning.